Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and Hawaii. I'm your host, Nicole Hori.
And I'm your co-host, Maria Kashem.
In our show this time, we'll cover the recent October ThinkTech HVCA luncheon panel program we called Newsmorphosis 3 Online.
In this program, a blue ribbon panel discussed the sea changes in online news and journalism and the effects on our community.
Print press daily newspapers are going out of business all across the country. The news is moving from radio and TV to online. News and the consumption of news is in a global transformation.
In 2010, the Honolulu Advertiser was closed, and the Star-Advertiser became the state's only print press daily newspaper.
We had a Newsmorphosis program then, and again a year later. Now we are following up to see what changes have occurred since that time.
It's not a drill. The availability and consumption of news in our community is directly related to the quality of life in that community.
If we are less well-informed than we'd like to be, if we're not satisfied with the quality of the news we're getting, is there anything we can do about it?
Print press newspapers are going online. TV and radio are going online. Business models are changing. Journalism is changing. Should we be worried?
For this inquiry, we assembled veteran newspaperman and editorial page editor Jerry Burris for opening remarks, and Howard Dicus of Hawaii News Now, one of the most influential news organizations in our state, was our moderator.
We also assembled a superlative panel consisting of Patty Epler, editor of Civil Beat and Huffington Post Hawaii, Jared Kuruiwa, digital manager of KHON2 News, Steve Petrenick, veteran editor of Hawaii Business Magazine, David Shapiro, hard-hitting and extraordinarily popular columnist, and Malia Zimmerman, investigative reporter, editor, and publisher of the Hawaii Reporter.
The program started out with opening remarks from Jerry Burris.
So while we're trying to figure out what the job of the new online is, we know that it's here to stay. I mean, there's no question about that. The old media dwindle, and they're getting smaller and smaller, and it's a sad story. And I obsessively go online and find out each day there's something sad about what's happening to the old media. I found this thing the other day. I'll just read it to you, which kind of tells a story. As recently as 2006, U.S. newspapers attracted nearly $50 billion worth of annual advertising. 2006. 95% of it was aimed at readers of their print editions. By 2010, a couple of years ago, the total print ad income had been sliced in half to $22 billion, with a meager $3 billion online. Classified ad revenues, which was usually the margin of profit in most newspapers, had gone down to nothing. Craigslist and so forth had taken that away, and the newspapers missed a beat on that.
Then we turned it over to Howard Dicus, who, as our moderator, did an excellent job in moderating the presentations and the Q&A.
Of these five people, who should we start with? I'm thinking we'll have Patty Epler from Civil Beat. Give her idea of what she thinks the job is and how it can be done and how it is being done. So here's Patty.
Civil Beat is doing really well. We just won 2 national awards for our investigative reporting, and we're adding staff. We're trying to fine-tune what we cover. For instance, bringing in a development reporter, which was something that we had kind of let slide before. On the other side of Civil Beat, you probably know that we started a public interest law firm that is available to represent all media, all citizens who have public records, public access, government transparency issues. The demise of the SHIELD law, this session had a lot to do with that. So you can, if anyone here has any interest in that, you can reach Brian Black, who's the executive director at info@civilbeatlawcenter.org. So I feel that Civil Beat has really stepped up to the plate in terms of trying to up the game here for investigative and hard news reporting, and that all, of course, is about promoting community discussion on issues that are important and sort of bringing out things that maybe folks don't know about. A little bit about the business model is we partnered with Huffington Post to form HuffPost Hawaii, and that launched September 5th. And, you know, it's clear we're hoping that that's a good business investment for us and that will generate revenue that will help fund Civil Beat as well as HuffPost Hawaii. And Jason Harper, our business manager, is right here if anybody wants to hit him up later about that. HuffPost Hawaii has just been already a huge success for us. I was struck by, there's some promos running on Hawaii News Now about, after kind of all these years in business, 4 million page views a month. So HuffPost Hawaii has been in business since September 5th, and we've already had 1.8 million unique visitors and 6.5 million page views just in the first month of October so far. So the new venture was sort of leaked by the guy who reports about leaks, Glenn Greenwald, and so it's still being formed. It's probably 9 months to a year away from launch. There's just a lot of things about it that are being put in place, but it's definitely a way to bring really good national level investigative reporting to readers. And, Pierre's commitment to journalism has been demonstrated here, and certainly Civil Beat is kind of the incubator for what he wants to do now on a national scale.
A lot of times we think investigations involve trying to get paperwork or just interviewing a few sources, but the stories that we've done at Hawaii Reporter, I think, make us stand out because we really, for example, I'll give you the story about when the dam breached at Koloko. What we did was hike up the whole breached area from the beach all the way to the top of the mountain to see what was affected, how many trees were down, what kinds of animals were killed, what kind of property damage there was. We got aerial photos from the helicopter companies and satellite photos to look at what actually the damage was and how the dam had changed over the years. Because the issue at the time, we found out even on the first day, was that it was allegedly that the spillway had been covered and that had led to the dam overtopping. So we looked to see what kinds of information we could get in that regard. So it wasn't just interviewing people, but we also did that and got records and engineering records and so on, and we had to do the battles with the Department of Land and Natural Resources and all the usual agencies that are not usually good about turning over information to get that, as well as actually just doing the groundwork, talking to the people that live there and so on. And so that ended up turning into a story that ABC 2020 did with us in partnership with Hawaii Reporter that aired, and as a result, the Attorney General here used that video as part of their investigation into what ultimately led to the indictment of the man who owned the property, Mr. Pfluger. And as you probably know, he pled no contest down to 1 count of reckless endangerment in the first degree and will be sentenced in January. That took years and years and years, but we did do quite a bit of work on that story. There was another story, for example, we do a lot of investigation into farm labor trafficking. And that's something really that people here haven't paid attention to. You probably could care less until I tell you what's actually happening. One of the issues, and we have to get a translator to do this with us. So, it's really difficult. We have to go a lot of times in the middle of the night or on the weekends, and sometimes we accompany lawyers who are representing these people, and we have to find these people who are working on these farms who we know about, and a lot of times we know about them because they're sick. They've been in the hospital. The reason they've been in the hospital is because they've been trafficked here illegally. They have no health care. They're not being paid fair wages at all. And when they actually spray pesticide, which is being sprayed on our food, which goes to our markets, they don't read English. They don't have any training. They don't mix it properly, and they don't wear the proper equipment, and they get exposed to this, and so they ultimately end up being in the hospital, and that's where we've interviewed a lot of them, and also we've interviewed them while they're sick and trying to get help. So those are things that we can actually trace, and as a result of these investigations, the federal law enforcement is looking into how these people are being trafficked here, which we know. We were able to identify an entire trafficking network, and it involves about 1,000 people here coming in from Asia that are living here. So that affects us because it not only affects our food supply, but it also affects our hospitals who have these people come in without health insurance and so on. So that's kind of what we do.
My one word would be Palin. My thoughts when I read the topic of this is online news doing its job was what job? And I thought of a story about Sarah Palin. I'm going to take a lot of crap for quoting Sarah Palin, and this is not an endorsement in any way, but she got off a pretty good line against Obama's work as a community organizer in Chicago in the 2008 campaign. Somebody asked her what the nature of her job was as a small town mayor in Alaska, and she said being mayor is kind of like being a community organizer, except you have actual responsibilities. And that's, to me, is kind of the difference between old media and new media right now in the broad sense. Old media had and still has very strict responsibilities and rules and codes and all of that, where online media, while there are some, like the two represented on our panel here, that take the same ethics very seriously, in a broad sense, online is the wild, wild west. There's nothing you have to do, but you can do just about anything you want to. And I think that's where the crux of the matter is going to lie, in determining what the job of the online media are. The old media are clearly in decline, and there's an expectation that the new media, the online media, will take our place, but we're a long way from that happening now, and I don't see a clear path to getting there. Like, you talk about newspapers. We had a clear job. Couldn't be more clear. Our job was to be the preeminent source of news and information in our communities, and not just hard news locally and nationally, but sports news, business news, lifestyle news, entertainment news, everything. And this was at the heart of our business model. By providing all this information, we drew large numbers of readers who wanted the information, and by drawing large numbers of readers, we drew advertisers who wanted those readers as customers. So it was a very, very clear line, and we had clear responsibilities. And there was also a public service ethic to this. For most of the last century, newspapers have used the First Amendment as a license to print money. That's no longer the case, but it was for a long time. And there was an acceptance within the business that along with this license came a responsibility and obligation to provide the information people needed to operate effectively in a democracy and to hold government accountable.
My word, I'm sorry, is numbers. And there are three types of numbers that I'm going to talk to you about today. Those numbers are about money, they're about news consumers, actually the people who are reading the news, and they're about reporters. Now, these numbers I came up with are national numbers. I couldn't find hard data on local news media, but I'm confident that these national numbers reflect what's happening here. So I'm going to start with, Howard, does Mark Platt allow you to use those crappy visuals that you used to use? So I printed this one out. This is from the Pew Report, one of the many sources I consulted. And you can't see it very well. I don't know if the cameraman can zoom in, but way back in '94, 72% of Americans got some of their news from TV, 72%. And when we had our first Newsmorphosis conference, and that was back in 2010, we had someone telling us, and very truthfully, that most Americans still got their news from TV. That is still true, but, this is a big but, it's down to 55%. Of the people who said, yesterday I got my news from TV, that's 55%. And guess what? Digital's up to 50%. And that, of course, is huge in the last few years. And by digital, we mean not just on your laptop, but by your phone. And that's a huge segment of it. Other print is also declining, if you want to come and take a look at this. And let me tell you what digital news they're getting it from. Most readers get their digital news from traditional news organizations. This seems counterintuitive, but there's 3 online measurement firms, Comscore, Nielsen, Experian, and Hitwise, and they compute their traffic in different ways, so their numbers don't all match up. But if you take the websites of newspapers, cable, and network news, they account for 20 of the top 25 sites that Americans get their digital news from. 20 of the top 25. So the traditional media is still strong there. However, Yahoo is number 1. Huffington Post on one of those measurement tools is number 2. So they are very strong also, but traditional still has a strong presence. I want to talk about the number of reporters, and clearly that number in America is shrinking. Now, Yahoo, HuffPost, other digital outlets, they're hiring some reporters, but their numbers are tiny compared to where most reporters still work today, and that's newspapers and TV. And the newspaper newsroom, they had their further cutbacks. We've had a decade or more of cutbacks. In fact, we've had 20 years of cutbacks. The newspaper newsrooms are down to 39,000, and that's 30% below the peak, which was back in 1990. TV news. Anyone who's worked in a local TV newscast for more than a few years can tell you that there are fewer reporters today than there used to be. What are the consequences of that? Well, the Pew Center says sports, weather, and traffic now account for 40% of the content on local newscasts.
Hi, so my word today is going to be filters. And what I'm basing this upon is Eli Parisser, I'm sure I'm butchering his name, did a TED Talk back in 2011 where he put out a quote from Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook. A squirrel dying in front of your home may be more relevant to your interest right now than people dying in Africa. And I think that's a key point in the digital world that we live in now, is because everything that you see, everything that you read is being filtered by somebody or something. And because a lot of these systems are automated, whether it's Google or Yahoo or what have you, you're only seeing things that specifically what the computer thinks is what you would rather see. And so if you went on Google and you search for Egypt, you wouldn't necessarily get the same thing as your neighbor next to you doing the exact same search, because these are customized specifically to you. And the scary thing about that is it kind of tears to the core what exactly our jobs are. And I believe our jobs really are to create a civic forum so that we can all have a discussion, so that we all can come to a conclusion beyond just the newscast or beyond just the articles that you see. And I think that's really gets to the core of what the problem is in not only digital media, but in our entire society. Recently, David Carr from the New York Times wrote a piece about gerrymandering. And he was talking about how a lot of people in the political world think that, well, I don't think they think that. I think they know that part of the reason why the shutdown happened was because we have districts that are very strong, either blue or red. And because of that, you end up with a lot more of a 50-50 type of world where you can have things be shut down that way, or have, a group take over control or another group say no to it. Now, what David Carr was saying, well, not only is politics that way, but so is the media. Because now you have the media starting to shift into these gerrymandered type of populations, because they know that this is the population that they can appeal to. This is the greatest number of most impact that they can have. But I want to carry that one step farther. That I think our communities are also starting to become that way, where the communities are starting not to see beyond the 10-mile radius around their homes. And I think that's the most frightening part. And that's the part that really where digital media is failing the community. And I think we have to work together, all of us, to figure out a way to make this better.
Following the panel discussion, the panelists had an opportunity to summarize their thoughts, and Bill Spencer gave us his customary spensation on the takeaways.
What they're getting from social media is someone they know has endorsed a story.
When you got an entire newspaper, you just might happen to flip by a story and see something that might be interesting and read it. That's something that we've lost by doing this digital type of thing that we're doing.
1 in 3 Americans now get their news through Facebook.
2 weeks ago, I reduced my Star-Advertiser home delivery to just weekends. By the time I get the Star-Advertiser on my doorstep, I've actually kind of read everything already online.
Yeah, I'd really like to see us included be a lot more aggressive with going after transparency in government reporting, and I look forward to this new Civil Beat Law Center.
And I really wish we'd worry less about the delivery tools and more about the quality of the content being delivered and the journalism and ethics underlying it. And I'd really like to see more of the discussion focused there.
Where we're really at with this whole thing is, what is the business model that's going to work to keep the truth machine alive?
This was a very interesting and provocative program. All the speakers were great, and the Q&A between Howard Dykes and the panel was very thought-provoking.
The quality of our news reflects and defines the strength and moral quality of our community. A great state deserves great news.
We broadcast the entire program on Spreaker.com. You can find the link to it on ThinkTech Hawaii.
And now, let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on Ustream.tv. Visit ThinkTechHawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech.
And now, here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
I don't think in the history of the web has there ever been a web service that was announced to open on a particular day and be prepared to serve millions and millions of people and, you know, conduct millions of transactions like the Affordable Care Act website. And since it failed and had problems, you know, it was slow, it was this, it was that, you know, there were front-end problems, there were back-end problems. Who knows what the problems are? But now everybody and their brother seems to be a web expert, you know, and they're severely criticizing the Obama administration for, you know, doing this, attempting this, and they're basically, you know, certainly the conservative pundits are saying this just affirms, you know, the Republicans' position on the government shutdown, which really doesn't have anything to do with the website. This is a monumental undertaking, and at worst, they underestimated, you know, the difficulty of the goal, which is to be able to accommodate so many people. And then on top of that, there was so much hype that, you know, everybody felt obligated to jump on and try it. When in fact, you know, the insurers aren't ready with their plans yet, and it's just going to take time. It's an evolutionary process.
You know, as many programmers as the federal government can get, as many resources as it can marshal. This is pushing the envelope. And they can't know all the problems, you know, up front.
Absolutely.
They're inventing a lot of things, and we know that when you invent things on the web, it tends to bite back.
Anybody that's ever tried to write a software program or put up a website is always going to be surprised by how people misuse it, abuse it, and stumble into problems that could never have been anticipated.
And no surprise that the Republicans are complaining about it. You know, every opportunity to try to repeal it, undermine it, you know, make it not work, they will take. Why are we surprised with that? We shouldn't be surprised with that at all. If people could agree, if the Republicans would come around, this would not be hard. We'd work together. We'd make it happen.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company, empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
The Foreign Trade Zone, operated by the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, encourages international trading in Hawaii and brings the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs.
Okay, Maria, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Jay Fidel does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
Totally, Nicole. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be an underwriter, a sponsor, or a volunteer, and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Nicole Hori. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.